explain the file handling major activity 5.1. First, we'll declare the header. First, the header files. Just use these stdio.h that are enables the file handling functions, and the stdlib for our use for our memory management, and also for our string.h that enables string related functions. And also define the file name as expenses text that are going to store our users' expenses. And also for our category report, category report that store the spending by category, stores the total spending by category, and also the limit. We define the max categories as we limits the distinct category starts to report into 50. First, we use function. Uh, we make function for made function for our add expenses. That user will add their expenses and store into the expenses text. First, we're going to open the file as append mode, and going to use if, and if it's true, it's going to print the error opening file. If it's not, it's going to continue into working or just yes. And here are the our string for our update character data type as date 11 that stores the expenses date as 10 characters, but also just add the null terminator and the also for the category. Going to store our expenses categories, and for our amount, so also declare the amount for our stores the expenses amount as double data type is used for our decimals. First, prompt the user to get the date the date of the expenses, and stores into the date variable as date 11 our string date 11, and also use the get chart to clearly stated here that clears new line from buffer that. And for the second one, prompt the user to enter the category and store for the category string that we declare to the top, and also for the get chart that clears the new line from buffer, and the amount from the user to enter the amount, and reads the amount storing into floating point double. And for here, we're going to closing the file and prompt the user that the record is appended. For our second function is the less expenses function. And for this, the purpose of this function is display all expenses and calculates total spending. This function. First, it open the file as reading mode, and and if we and we're going to use the if, and if it's true that this is true, we go prompts the user that no expenses recorded yet. If it's not, it will going to continue the function. And here we also declare our strings that are we're using to store our values. No, we also declare the total as 0 for temporary variables for reading records that are accumulates the grand total expenses. First, it reads the entirely sequentially as the scanf present into this function as you're going to use a while loop. And the second, it's going to print the user the grand total and closes the file. And we're going to move for our first for our third function called daily total. Daily total. Purpose of this function is to display total expenses for a specific day. First, we declare the data type as character or date 11, and print f or ask the user to enter a date and store into the date variable or for our string, and clears the buffer into the new line to ensures for our clears. And first, it will open the file as reading mode, and this is the same as the first function. First lines, they're the same. If it's not, or if it's not, if it's to do, going to print the expenses. No expenses recorded yet. For this declaration is a temporary storage for expense records, same as the for the list expenses. And this line checks our record matches the selected date and accumulate total expenses for that day. And it will going to print the total expenses. It's going to print going to print the total spent on that day and closes the file. Okay. And for our third function, the category report function. First, the purpose of this function is to generate a report showing the total spending for a category and writes it into the category report text. It also prints the report console or prints the spending per category. It's just also for the previous also for a previous function. We're just using the file. We're just accessing the file and accessing the file as ready mode. If this is true, we're going to print the now expenses recorded yet. If it's not, we're going to continue. And we are just use the parallel arrays here, the parallel arrays to store the category names, their cumulative amounts, count that count keeps and tracks the many unique categories have been found. And here we're just defining defining these temporary variables, alt expenses, and entries read from expenses text. And for this line, reads the one just using go while loops and reads one line at a time using this fscan app and do this here and checks the checks if the category already exists in the categories are using star compare here it is and if found we set the index of that category here and break line is for adding a new categories or update totals. If the category is new, it store in the initialize its total spending. If the category is exist, update the total spending for that category. Here are if and here are this and closes the file. For this line, opens the category text as writing mode, and if it fails to open, the program prints error, creating report file, and return. And if it's not, going to continue and continue for to this line and save the category totals in file that writes each category and its total spending into the report file. It closes file after writing. Here, closing the file after writing. And printing the category, the last function, our edit expenses function. Here, just the same as the previous one's functions. Also for this, same as the previous functions. And for this line, just declaring, here just the same as the previous function, but here same. But this long string offsets is key. Used for keep track of the file position to update the amount of field. Call determines whether the expense was successfully created. And here are the these lines are reached each expenses that are using F scan F. Here it is. F scan F. And checks if the both states are category matchmaking using strcfp or this string compare. And uses the apptel to store the position of the amount field and moves the file pointer to back amount using fseek. And overrides the amount fprint here print ensuring fixed with formatting. Okay. And closes the file if done. Start string comparing. If found is equals to printing the update complete. If it's not going to print the record not found. And for our main function, you just declare the character data type choice and use a do while loop. And here for printing our display menu and asking the user to enter their choices. And we're just calling our functions here in our main function. We just use the switch case. And case A, just use a character data type because we are using alphabets for our case. Okay. For default invalid choice, and if users input big letter Q, we're going to exit into the file, exit into the system. And I thank you.